In the Genesis 1 and 2 account, there's two different stories of creation. Try and view them as two different dimensions. When Adam and Eve were without sin, they lived in one dimension. But when they done the sin, they got kicked into another. So if you can imagine, the universe is constantly expanding. The one that we live in now, the fake archon reality, and the moon is constantly retracting. So you imagine they built a temple, and around that temple became like a bubble, a dome. And as they built more temples and more temples, that started to expand until it engulfed the face of the whole earth. There's tales of a couple of places where people didn't age. One is Shangri-La. In the Himalayan mountains, there's lots of salt towers for filling with salt, and in Ireland as well. And the story of Psalm 61 tells of a king that lived for many generations, Athelstan. So if you can imagine it like this, sin didn't exist. Sin is dirty. It can't exist in a certain dimension or in the place where God is, because there's none of that there. It only exists in this part, in this place, this constantly so-called expanding universe, and it's moving away from us. So I don't understand the reason that what we're looking at now, which they say is a hologram, it's a bad copy. They say it's a very bad copy. It's like a computer virus. So you can imagine the Earth is the original computer program, for instance, yeah? The rocks and the stones and everything's made perfect. And it was made without blemish. Someone came along and got a stone, carved on it and made an idol, and said that's a god, and convinced someone else to pray to it. They just gave their power away. That's how it starts off. So they actually know where the first city was. It's called Urk. In modern day Iraq. Iraq is named after Urk, the city Urk. And the god that lived there now, his name is Enki. But prior to him, there was a feminine deity there. That feminine deity is the Queen of Heaven, who could be linked to Lilith. You have to listen to stuff in the Sanhedrin if you go onto the YouTube and say Lilith, and listen to stuff about her. She kills babies and she causes disease. She's a vampire, a parasite. Space vampires and all. There used to be a movie about a space vampire, a bitch that I watched it years ago, and a spaceship turned up and there was a woman in it and she was a vampire. That's Lilith. Because in the Bible it says continual weeping, the going up of Lilith, the little ones, continual weeping, because Lilith kills the little ones. So it's written in the Bible, except Cain is not called Cain in this page, he's called Moab. So he has a few different names over the century, over the millennia. But you can imagine, his first temple is called the House of Sweet Water. Now, Cain is Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is Cain. Moab. So Gilgamesh, the story of Gilgamesh in the Sumerian text is he went to this woman and said to her, how long am I going to live? She says, you're only going to live 500 years, and he was furious. So he went around the place building temples, making loads of stuff out of stone, killing everything, riding everything. He's a mad rapist and a paedophile. He's a sicko. Absolute sicko. This is the god. And then he was cursed and he was turned into a reptile. So that's where you get the start of the so-called reptilian species. But he said he was the third man, and then he was 3 parts god or something, Gilgamesh says. But also, he got cursed. So there's 2 stories in the Genesis. One is Genesis 1. It's a creation of a man, but they don't have the restrictions. The first creation of a man doesn't have the restrictions on him. As the second man created in Genesis 2, the creation sequence is different, and the rules and regulations on the second man are different. the generations of Adam. So when Cain rose up and killed Abel with a stone, I think that's a metaphor for the two different creations and two different types of man. One of them rose up and made the other one worship him as a god. And that's how Enki created the house of the sweet waters. Because if you read the Bible, it says that you are vapor. Vapor is water, steam. You are vapor that passes. What is man's life but a little vapor that passeth away in time? Now time is Father Time. He's the one that messed around with all the stuff. So messed around with everything. He's Father Time. Time is bad. Time didn't exist. Time, see, because time wears you out and sucks your juice out of you. That's where you get grey and you wither and you get old. The aging process is not natural. We were never meant to age. It's called worn out in the book of Daniel. He will wear out the anointed, the saints it's called in the Bible. He will wear out the saints, be given into his hand till time and a half. So there's something devoid in the time. So basically, what you look at in the sky, in the future in the Bible texts, that doesn't exist. That falls away. The stars fall out of the sky like leaves. The sky unravels. The moon stops giving its light, and the moon stops retracting away from us. And Jesus comes in with all power and glory. That's the most important part. But that means to me that's a temporary thing. That's a fake. That's the fake. What we're looking at when we look in the sky is a fake archon reality that was created when idolatry was created and temples were created to the fake gods and the signs of the zodiac. They don't really exist. They do, but they're gonna fall. They're a bad copy. So how did all this happen? Well, God slept. I know it says in the Bible God created creation and then he slept. So when God sleeps, it says in the Bible, a day with God is 1,000 years. So a night is probably 1,000 years as well. So you can imagine God went to sleep for 1,000 years, and Lilith and Cain or whoever it is, and Sam Yazel, they started to make temples and while God was asleep and make the other race that were created before them that lived a simple life, no farming methods or nothing. They got them to worship them as gods. Something like that. And use them as slaves. So it says Cain rose up against his brother in the fields. So when you look at the first civilization, they used to harvest the wheat and the barley and all down there. But they built a pyramid, a Gujarat it's called. And it's called the House of Sweet Water, and it was the Temple of Enki. But a woman was worshipped there beforehand. So Cain claims to be the third man. So you have Adam, Abel and Cain. And if you're able-bodied, you're a good slave. So that's where the word able-bodied comes from. Slave, because when someone says to you, are you able-bodied? That means are you ready to work for me, you're the slave. So basically, he killed his brother, but using idolatry and temples to harvest his vapor, the fountain of youth. So you can practically tell that the House of Sweet Water in southern Mesopotamia, in Uruk, that Gujarat, was where the first fountain of youth is. Now, if these gods, they need vapor, so they must have another fountain of youth somewhere else. Maybe it's above us, maybe it's below us, but they definitely need the vapor. And the vapor is what keeps them alive. They should have been gone by now. Should have been incarcerated. But they're using their vapor. So Cain rose up against his brother. He had not morbid been at these from his youth. He had not been emptied from vessel to vessel, neither had he gone into captivity. Therefore his scent and his taste remain in him. Fee fi fo fum, I smell the blood of an English man.